Welcome to the Illinois State University Writing Program Learning Outcome Tutorial Series. In this brief lesson, we'll be talking about assessment. What is assessment? The form of assessment you're probably most familiar with is the grade you've earned on a paper or a test, or the final grade for a class you see after the semester is over. However, that's not the only form of assessment. Any feedback that allows you to see the extent of your learning is a form of assessment. Even something as low-key as a professor saying, "Hey, good work today," as you walk out of the class is a form of assessment. Note that your particular instructor may not actually be a cat. We might think of Professor Kitty Cat's encouraging words after class as a form of informal assessment, while the grade on your paper or test is more formal. Another way of classifying assessment is into the categories formative and summative. Formative assessment attempts to measure learning as it is forming, as it is happening. You've probably been in a classroom where after a long complex lecture or demonstration, the teacher looks out at the students and says, "Any questions?" That's actually a crude example of formative assessment technique. Your instructor is trying to verify if any learning has happened. If you say nothing under these circumstances, many instructors will assume that they have succeeded in their learning outcome for the lesson. Asking questions about the parts you didn't understand or that went by too fast actually signals to the instructor how to better impact your learning. Summative assessment attempts to sum up learning that has already happened. Chapter, unit, and final tests are typical examples of formal summative assessments. Wide-open essay questions that don't have an answer that can be easily memorized are an example of an instructor trying to do a formative assessment of your understanding of conceptual or procedural material. The blank space after the question is the place where you make your learning visible to the instructor. Looking at all four possible combinations, we've got examples for two of them, but these aren't the only possibilities. There are other methods of informal formative assessment and formal summative assessment. Informal summative assessment can take the form of a chat with the instructor, one-on-one, or the entire class, after the conclusion of a unit or project. An instructor asking you to converse about the course content is a low-key manner of trying to gauge the extent of your learning, to see if they need to revisit prior material or if your class can move on to new stuff. Or an instructor might teach you something, then immediately quiz you on it. The point here is to gather data immediately on whether learning is happening. These four examples don't represent anywhere near the entire range of assessment techniques, nor do all assessments feature the instructor assessing students, as you will see in future videos in this series. Whatever assessment techniques are used in your classes, try to keep in mind that they aren't just a way of seeing if you pass the class or get the A you need to bring up your GPA. Rather, your instructor uses assessment as a diagnostic tool to ensure that learning is happening in the classroom. Thank you for joining us.